Now, when you were down, you reached the final depth of 37 feet, and that was in this 5x5 and the auger depth.
Yeah.
Was there any, were there layers of bone and artifacts at that depth, or were you
Yeah.
beyond it?
No, we were down it, and we ended up on top of another major rockfall.
Oh,
It turns out the cliff had fallen around that time, and there were bones, and these were big bones. We knew that these were large bison, not our present plains bison. That's what we'd expect anyways. And there was, so when the cliff had fallen at 5,000 years ago, say, the people just were driving the animals right into the rubble.
yeah.
And below that was, in fact, bedrock. Below that was what's called the Willow Creek Formation, which is a freshwater shale mudstone.
So essentially eliminating any further possibility that there's deeper deposits at the kill.
No, because that was a slump.
Oh, so it's not it's a slump of
It's
more
a slump of the bedrock that come out like
there
this.
could be something underneath it.
Underneath it.
Yeah.
So in 1966, we came back with the Geological Survey of Canada, Archie Stocker. He was interested in, just what these events represented, because obviously they represented, earthquakes of some kind, shaking events that would result in these things to happen. So we brought in a drag line, and we selected the area which had been most badly damaged by the pot hunters, which is about 20 feet north of us, just over there. And we simply put a trench in.
Right.
And went right through the bedrock slump, and we found bones underneath it. And they were 30 feet, well, they were way down below the surface, 30 feet below the bottom of this, and 10 feet in from the edge.
Right.
And so we collected a very small sample, but we never were able to get a radiocarbon date on it.
Yeah.
The sample that was sent in didn't have enough collagen in it.
And I know I've talked to John Dormar about this, and he said that some of that bone was collected, and he thinks some of it has never been located either. That he referred to some jaws and other things, they may have been lost, and he's asked me if I know where they are. We're always sort of hoping someday that material may show up, but for all we know, Archie may have taken it away.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
that's something that some days we should relook at.
That it was bison though.
Oh yeah, definitely bison. Yeah, no question, big bison. And complicating the story down, because this was down at the bottom here, is that some of the later drives dating in the last 1,000 years had actually spilled over the edge. So we had a later set of bone beds down, and we had all the other stuff. And essentially, you had to get in underneath all that.
Right.
It was definitely there.
Now, before you arrived here, one of the old-time archaeologists in Western Canada, Boyd Wetlaufer, had been here, and he had excavated up here at the kill site, but also down on the prairie level. And as you know, down there where the spring channel crosses the walking path, he recovered two of these points, the bases of two spear points that we know date around, say, 9,000 years or so. Scott's Bluff, they're called.
Yeah.
And that raised a lot of interest because here's evidence that people were at this site 9,000 years ago. And I think everybody thought, wow, could they have been using the jump 9,000 years ago? Do you think there's any chance that some of the bones that came out from under that slump, that were found under that second bedrock slump, might have actually been part of a kill site that could go back that old?
They were kill deposits.
Yeah.
And that would perfectly fit, because the Cody complex, the people who used made the Scott's Bluff points, they are our first really developed bison hunters.
Yeah.
And it would fit just perfectly for.
The head smash in stands out now as possibly the oldest buffalo jump. There's a site in Texas called Bonfire Shelter that has been argued by some to be a buffalo jump. It's got a very steep cliff, and it's got a cave kind of situation at the bottom with bison bones in it. It's clearly 10,000 years old. Nobody disputes the date. The dispute is whether or not it's a jump, or whether people maybe hauled bones into the cliff from the valley. Yeah. That would be the only earlier buffalo jump than this one right now.
In North America.
Yeah. So do you think head smash in might be the oldest jump? Do you think...
Well, I think the important thing is it's the oldest continuously used buffalo jump, even though we got a couple holes in the sequence here. Yeah. Bonfire Shelter was essentially used early for buffalo and for horses, and then was essentially abandoned until about 2,500 years ago. Then there's another event in it, and that's the end of buffalo jumping in the southern plains.
Yeah. It does make you wonder if it is really a buffalo jump, and people had discovered at least some parts of the technique of how to do that 10,000 years ago, why did they just quit? Whereas here, maybe there weren't very many down there yet.
Well, you have climate change and everything going on, and yeah, probably.
this is, I think, as you say, I think one of the really important things about Head Smash, and probably having a lot to do with why it was designated by UNESCO, is the fact that it has this tremendously long cultural record of just people being here for thousands of years, coming back here over and over and over again using this site. I've sometimes likened it to kind of like a machine, you know, and I think Kehoe used the term an industrial complex, that these things were mechanized almost as buffalo hunting devices. You've invested a lot in the landscape now. You've learned it, you've built the drive lanes, and you know, you map them back there so you know how convoluted and complex this system of drive lanes is. That's an enormous amount of labor you've invested in a place, and you could see people having now a reason to stay around this area or to come back frequently, time after time.
Oh yeah, well, just like down in the boiling pits and all the rock that you worked on that had to be brought up from down by the river.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about
Tons and tons.
hundreds of thousands of tons.
Yes.
I calculated for a small buffalo jump over by Pincher Creek, there's nothing like this. Where we mapped all the drive lanes is on a wind farm. I actually, you know, we weighed all the bloody rocks. And I think we had 250,000 tons of rock went into
Did
that.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget how many individual rocks.
Yeah.
You know, just huge. A lot amount of labor goes into these places. You're right. So one of the interesting questions is I'm thinking about now is, because this has, here in this basin, we have the highest density of buffalo jumps.
Anywhere.
Anywhere. Well, there's two. There's one other. There's Sun River, Missouri River, west of Great Falls.
Yeah.
And they're both are comparable because they have the highest Chinook frequencies. They're the best places for wintering, and they're very, you know, really comparable. But the question is, most of these little buffalo jumps around here, although most of them have not been excavated but been potted, you know, they have a very short use record.
Yeah.
But they built big systems, not as anywhere as complex as this one. So I'm thinking maybe they, you know, around 2,000 years ago they were experimenting, right? And finally they found that this was the best basin, and a couple of others compared to the rest of them, and they just abandoned these others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of merit in that because
But still, a lot of work got invested. You know, time and work to figure out how these systems work. Yeah.
Yeah. But like you say, I've been to many myself, and many of them there'll be a cliff and there'll be a flat land behind it, and there'll be some drive lanes there, and you realize the challenges that face those people with no topography to work with, no landscapes to hide. They had to just come right out in the open and be seen, and maybe using disguises or whatever, but move the herd. And when you go back to this one, you look and you say, look at all they had to work with there. This huge natural basin, all that high ground that they could use to their advantage. You could see where this is, as I called it once, the mother of all buffalo jumps. And